Welcome to Magic Circles in the Skies podcast. But before we begin, I'd like to give thanks to all the people that have liked, shared, and subscribed. Now for today's episode, The Angel and the Tides by Magic Circle in the Skies podcast, which I've renamed as Surrendering to the Waves That Brought Him. The structure will remain the same, starting off with a brief summary where I'll digress in a few sentences, give a reflection, and my little pearl of wisdom. Then we'll move on to my critical review on how I felt this fairy tale plays in today's society as a parallel using a film called Shine. Then we'll move on to the trigger points, and I'll let you know what in this fairy tale triggered me, whether it's good or negative. And then we'll move on to my quote to finish. Let's begin with surrendering to the waves that brought him, or the angel and the tides. An earth angel descends onto a sandy beach near a small village in Scotland, leaving his old life behind to begin anew with magical powers. He is sent on a mission to heal the broken hearts and lingering unforgiveness of a family mourning the drowning of their eldest son and a young nun burdened by guilt. Long ago, a vulnerable girl confessed her sin to the Catholic Church after her upper-class lover abandoned her under family pressure. I digress. I'm afraid this is all too common occurrence amongst the affluent. The church intervened, and Gwen, as she was known, awoke from a painful procedure, believing her baby had died. I digress. The secret actions in handling the delicate yet private situation created a space in her mind to think the worst. Grateful yet haunted by guilt, she became a nun. I digress. Gwen felt beholden to the church, therefore chose to devote her life to this institution. But was this really her purpose? The time is the late 1980s. A small child is found washed up on the shore, covered in sand. His head feels stiff and heavy as he moves, while distant waves of sounds of children playing with their dogs fill the crisp morning air. Slowly, he sheds his old self and rises, a brand new soul filling his body like fresh air. Dressed in modern clothes, he takes in the exquisite views as the tides quietly roll in, carrying away the remains of his past into another realm. I digress. England is pretty, but Scotland is breathtaking. Now for the plot summary. Barking dogs rush to greet Letham, the mysterious stranger welcomed by a grieving family. As he converses with them, the dark hues of sadness begin to lift. I digress. It's interesting how his mission magnetically comes towards him. The twin girls stare at him, mesmerized by his spiritual glow. The mother, taking his hand with a sense of familiarity, remarks, "My boy Tom was left-handed too. You bear striking resemblance to him. Aren't you 10? The boy nods. I digress. The immediate recognition of the boy breaks the ice. The family, charmed by his presence, invites Letham to stay in the spare room once belonging to Tom. After breakfast, he gently asks Clara, "What happened to Tom?" With a heavy heart, she replies, "My boy died at sea." Amid her sorrow, she adds bitterly, "I blame the teacher. I'll never forgive the school for their carelessness." I digress. Letham knows the boy's life was cut short from a predestined karmic level. Reflection. The grieving family are quick to take Letham under their wings in hope he could feel the emptiness of the deceased son, pearls of wisdom. Letham's question opens up Clara's honesty and reveals her unforgiveness. Later, the family departs for Sunday service at the local church. Meanwhile, Sister Gwen finishes her morning prayers when she spots the Hogan family arriving. Suddenly, a remarkably striking young boy of about 10 with reddish blonde hair and crystal blue eyes causes her heart to skip a beat. I digress. Her repressed desires from long past are brought to the surface. A moment of honest recognition, perhaps, memories of forbidden tenderness and a lost young love, Callum, who had once charmed and then abandoned her when she revealed her pregnancy, flood her mind. I digress. Such haunting memories stir within her like a bad dream, chasing her in broad daylight with nowhere else to turn. She found solace in the church, where Father Declan once assured her that she would be cared for. After a difficult night, she was left relieved, yet sorrow when the child had vanished without explanation. A birth erased from the memory, leaving her to devote her life to God. I digress. Does the retracing of her reasons for becoming a nun make her wonder, what if things were different and she wasn't so confused? Would she have made the same decision? Reflection. Letham's presence makes Sister Gwen revisit repressed desires of the past. Pearls of wisdom. Feelings buried alive never die. Her love for Callum and their child have haunted her. As the boy reaches out his hand, Gwen gladly accepts it, feeling a strange electric connection, although her heart races with the thought that this could be Callum's return. She couldn't be sure. I digress. The sense of hope with tingling aliveness must have been refreshing. Together, they join the church service and later stand in the healing circle. Letham stands between the sister, Gwen, and Clara, and both women feel a deep personal glow as they hold his hands. The leader speaks of forgiveness, cutting the cords of guilt, and allowing hearts to overflow with unconditional love. Overcome with emotion, both women weep and confess their pain, convinced they are unhealable. I digress. This moment would scare anybody being right there on the edge. Letham embraces them and softly murmurs, "May the power of the Holy Spirit restore your soul and bring healing. In Jesus' name, amen." In that moment, their spirits are transformed. I digress. Yes, indeed, a renewal of her heart and mind. Sister Gwen realizes that on that fateful night, her baby was born. The Hogan family had unknowingly adopted her son. I digress. What a relief it must have been for her that her child had been safe and in good hands. Tom, as it turns out, was her son, given to her as a divine gift. I digress. The burden of guilt had been lifted. The church may have led her astray, but she chose to believe the worst because of her original sin outside of marriage. Meanwhile, Clara feels an unbreakable bond forming with Gwen. When they look up, they find that Letham has vanished. I digress. I guess Letham realized he completed his mission and it was time to go. Reflection. The release of the weight of grief and the burden of guilt was a great welcome to the people present. Look, the beach, the children shout. They rush to the shore to find Letham standing, smiling, waving, and saying goodbye, my friends, as the rolling tide gently pours him under and the swell of waves rise into a towering mountain of water, its crest bathed in golden mid-evening light. The sky seems to smile upon the healed family and Sister Gwen, who removes her coif, signaling a new era, one in which she is free to love without guilt. I digress. At last, Gwen feels free to be herself without guilt. With wistful emotion, she murmurs, "He was my son too." Clara echoes softly, "Yes, he was your son too." Together they stand in awe of the magic in the sky, the earth angel who visited and healed them, if only for this once. I digress. Gwen, Sister Gwen, birthed a beautiful angel who healed many broken hearts, including her own. Wow, what an interesting contribution by Magic Circle in the Sky. An interesting and a deeply moving, I would say, story. So let's move on to my critical review, where I say exactly that. This is a deeply moving and poetic fairy tale with themes of grief, redemption, and the healing power of forgiveness. The Earth Angel appears in his new soul, disguised as a boy lost at sea. The clarity of this story creates space to debate the predicament of the church and Sister Gwen, and consequently, how she responded to the lack of evidence after the birth. Well, Sister Gwen did ask the church to help her deal with the responsibility of this situation. And I think she hid her anger of not seeing the baby behind the veil of being a nun. However, distance is crucial in such circumstances so as to avoid the birth mother from forming any attachments before the baby is given up for adoption. She was a young, wounded woman experiencing a huge responsibility that she was not capable of dealing with at the time. Sometimes we criticize and hold the church in contempt for doing exactly what we wanted at the time because we didn't want to get our hands dirty. The church is, in theory, a compassionate business. Clara, the mother who raised Tom, was heartbroken at not being able to conceive a baby, therefore was in the position to be there for the child's welfare. The heavens bowed to the love she gave Tom and therefore blessed her with twins before Tom's tragic accident. Most women in this situation feel trapped by the immediacy of the pregnancy and shame of abandonment. They're not thinking clearly about the future. This is really difficult, people, which is demonstrated when Sister Gwen says, "He was my son too." To be honest, I understand her sentiments, which is really about taking responsibility for the decision she made to surrender her motherly duties and not necessarily for being a real mother. Unfortunately, I get the impression she wants to have things both ways. The church was correct with handling the situation, except for not being quite honest with the quiet adoption. The healing brought the two women, mothers and family together, leaving a healthy legacy of all concerned in Tom Letham and Letham's life. That was an interesting, very, very interesting, and a sort of difficult decision for this young woman. And so many women today have to deal with this situation. And I think the immediacy of the situation really does, cloud sometimes our judgment. And sometimes maybe it's good that it clouds our judgment because we're not really prepared as a young 18-year-old to be a mother, to carry that type of responsibility. Now for the film Shine, which is what I will use as a parallel to this fairy tale. As a child piano prodigy, David Heathcote, this, by the way, this is a true story. Musical ambitions generate friction with his overbearing father, Peter. When Heathcote travels to London on a musical scholarship, his career as a pianist blossoms. However, the pressures of his newfound fame, coupled with the echoes of his tumultuous childhood, conspire to bring Heathcote's latent schizophrenia boiling to the surface, and he spends years in and out of various mental institutions. This is heartbreaking. This is a heartbreaking story about a father's jealousy of his son's virtuoso talent and the devastating emotional, psychological neglect that affected this David. This is typical of a narcissistic parent. Not saying that this parent was narcissistic, but from the film, I get the impression that he was a narcissist. Parents treat their child as the enemy number one. And this is true. They do treat them like enemies number one. I was my mother's enemy number one, just like with Whitney Houston and Sissy Houston, Amadeus Mozart, Michael Jackson and his father. These young prodigies are genius, but go on to live incredibly sad lives. However, with David, he was able to heal beautifully under the protective wing of his second wife, I should add, who taught him how to experience real love and revamp his career. The willingness to heal, which dovetails well with the fairy tale. This is so true. Yes, it's in the end, with the fairy tale and this film, what really brings the two together as a really wonderful, nice parallel is that both people, or the people, were willing to heal. The nun and Clara, they at first they resisted it because it was too overwhelming. The thought of actually all that burning, healing heat of glow, healing glow going through their bodies and having to release all that unforgiveness was overwhelming. But as they continued, their hearts opened up and they were willing to heal. And with David Heathcote, with the help of his devoted and loving wife, who he's still married to today, he has stepchildren, he has a really beautiful life. And it's because he did the healing, people. It's not easy to heal. It's not easy to go through the eye of the storm. But if you think of an eagle, eagles go through the eye of the storm every day. They never run away and say, I'm not going to do it, it's too difficult. They go through the eye of the storm. You know, when you're in the sky and the plane is going through all those tremors because of the wind and the rain, we're feeling that. But can you imagine if you have to actually go through that knot, that tension in the sky? It must be overwhelming. But the eagle comes out and soars even higher because it's a renewal. He's a brand new eagle. Let's move on to the trigger points. I want to talk a little bit about my stepfather. You know, on March 4th, my sister called me up, which is unusual because our family has been disenfranchised ever since my parents, my blood parents, got a divorce and really basically chose to use my sister and I as weapons of choice to go against each other. And but both my parents got remarried. I still have a stepmother who I've never spoken to and I've never had a relationship with, and I don't know if we ever will. But my mother got married. My dad was absent. My blood father was absent most of the time, and he left when I was about 15 years old for good, and I haven't seen him since then. So I haven't seen him for over maybe 40 years now, almost. And what was really great is that my stepfather, John, he took both my sister and I under his wing. He immediately treated us like we were family. And I realized why he did that, because at the funeral, when he died in 2016, and the funeral was in February of 2017, I found out that he wasn't raised by his mother. He wasn't raised by his biological mother. He was raised by his grandmother, which is, sometimes, here in Spain, a lot of the times the mother has to go out to work and the grandmother acts as the grandmother and the mother because they look after the child during the day. And, but anyway, he was raised by his, he didn't know his mother. I mean, it's different from here in Spain. I mean, the children know their mothers. They see their mothers every day and every evening before they go to bed, and they're there. It's just during the middle of the day, it's the grandmother that looks after them and feeds them and bathes them and etc., takes them to school. And, but he was just such a wonderful man. And he brought everybody in. We're family, we're family. And he didn't have a family, not really. I mean, he had a grandmother, but he didn't know his mother or father. And I consider him to be a wonderful gift given to me from spirit, to be my father, because my real father, my blood father, just because somebody is your blood parent, it doesn't mean they know how to raise you and have a relationship with you and connect with you. And so anyway, on March 4th, my sister told me, surprise, surprise, surprise. When we thought Dad was dead, well, he's alive. He's 95 years old, Melody, and he's been asking for you. Now, this is a man that's been asking about me. And we haven't spoken in over 38 years. We haven't seen each other in over 40 years. So I was quite surprised. But at the same time, I was really happy that I could finally get to, wish him happy birthday, 95. That's a very big year. And also tell him that I forgive him. Just like the nun and forgave the church, and Clara forgave the teacher. And there was a lot of forgiveness, and David Heathcote forgave his father. He was in the position to do so. They did all this healing. Healing allows you to forgive people. It really does. And so I was able to forgive my dad. I spoke to him on the phone. And when I said I forgive, I really wasn't forgiving him for his actions or what he did necessarily, even though it's not important to me. I was really forgiving him for myself. And what was interesting, I realized this happened just after I had come back from Canada about 2 years after I came back from Canada, because I came back from Canada in 2023. And in March of 2025, this happens. And while I was in Canada, I was able to deal with transmutation of family karma. I spent my whole life blaming myself. I was made to feel that I was the guilty one. I was the poison ivy that destroyed my parents' family. I destroyed this whole family. And once I was able to reframe my responsibility in this situation, I changed from being the cause of responsibility of my family breakup, which I wasn't. I changed it to being the change agent, to start anew, to change and to move forward onto a path where I'm guilt-free, because I wasn't responsible for it. And no sooner had I done that, I mean, it took, I shouldn't say no sooner, it took about 2 years, but can you imagine? I know that transmutation of family karma really did something, because because my father basically came out of his man cave after 38 years. So the transmutation really, really worked, not just for the family, but it also worked for generations past, ancestry. And my father, you know, after all this time, I'm glad I was able to speak to him. We were supposed to speak the other day, but we haven't got back in touch yet. We probably will. But I'm glad I was able to forgive. I'm glad I was able to release. I'm glad I was able to feel joy in my heart, speaking to him and wish him a happy birthday, and that he's 95 years old. But I'm also glad that I can still today, if somebody was to say to you, who was your father? I would have to say, John Talbot was my father. He was my real father. So thank you very much for the trigger point. The trigger point was positive for me, but it was also negative. But it paralleled alongside with the fairy tale. So thank you very much. And we're going to end with healing. My quote: healing is a lifelong lesson, blessing, and gift we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Healing is a lifelong lesson we give ourselves. Lifelong lesson, blessing, and gift we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Goodbye. Until next time.